Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome back to the World Chess Championship in 2007, which was held in New Mexico. So as I mentioned in my previous video of this very nice tournament, this I believe was really one of the most important tournaments in chess history, because for the first time and for the last time the world champion was decided in a tournament, not in a single match game, and many great players played, of course, Viswanathan Anand, Vladimir, Kramnik, Alexander Grischuk, Viswanathan Anand. These grandmasters, these top grandmasters are participating even these days, so they're performing in such a high level even in 2020. So you could just imagine how strong maybe Grischuk was in 2007, how strong was Viswanathan Anand when he was maybe younger and more greedy when it comes to chess, how they played in 2007. These were really the best sharks on the planet when it comes to chess, and I really liked this tournament because in this tournament Viswanathan Anand crushed them all. He didn't lose any games, which was really an incredible performance. And I'm showing you so many games by Viswanathan Anand because, in my opinion, that's really just my opinion, Viswanathan Anand is really the best player in history in one particular thing, and that's creating dynamics out of static positions. I believe really that no other player could do this better than Vichy. He played many times these static openings like Karo-Kan, maybe the semi-slav defense, but then when the position got so a little bit static, when you don't have so many great pawn moves, you always evaluate the dynamics by possible pawn moves, then Vichy found really some great ways how to create new dynamics in the game. That's why I really like this Viswanathan Anand style. It's different. For instance, we have the great attackers like Bobby Fischer, maybe Garry Kasparov. Garry Kasparov was attacking you from move 1 and similar ideas, but Viswanathan Anand style is simply different, and I think we can hang on to this style because it's really a nice style. Because first of all, when you play a chess game, you should really first play secure, then create some statics, not allowing your opponent to create really some great attacking possibilities again, and then it comes really to this idea who is better, who can really find the better moves. And in this game that I wanted to show you today between Viswanathan Anand and Alexander Grischuk, we had a similar idea. You see how the great Vichy will create some dynamics out of nothing basically. So let's check out the game. We have e4 by Vichy, e5 by Thug Life Alexander Grischuk, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5. The Ruy Lopez so far after the move a6, bishop to f4, knight to f6. This is the so-called Murphy defense. We have two knights out, which is very good in an opening to bring your knights out into the game in an early stage of the game. We have castling played by Viswanathan Anand. If you take this pawn on e4 immediately, it leads now most of the times into a more complicated line with rook to e1, d4 and similar ideas, because white has of course the opportunity to attack the king in the center. Black would need many moves in order to secure the king, bishop to e7, then castling, getting also the knight somewhere. So it's playable. It's also a great line for black and for white. It's played most of the times, but here in the game Grischuk decides to go with a more calm way, bishop to e7. We have rook to e1, finally protecting the pawn on e4, and we have now b5, bishop to b3, still common theory of course. After castling, we have now this idea to play the move a4. This is this anti-martial setup. We are not allowing, for instance, you could try maybe some c3 moves. This is also a very common idea of the Ruy Lopez to finally crack the position with the move d4. Then you could face this martial attack with the move d5. This would be a very annoying position for white to handle. I had my troubles while playing against this opening for white also. Here after move e takes d5, knight takes d5. Okay, you could take here a pawn. That's the idea of the martial attack. Here after knight takes e5, we could play knight takes e5, rook takes e5, and now after c6, bishop to d6, suddenly I believe that black has a good compensation for the pawn. Black has a great activity with the minor pieces. This knight is very well placed. You don't want to give up the bishop in an early stage of the game, but the problem is now this lack of development of these three pieces here. The queen is not participating in the game, so here it's a really great compensation for the pawn. So but after the move, as I said, castling here, a4 played by Vichy, and now this idea is not so powerful because first of all there are some tactical threats on the a file, so black cannot go very fast into this attack. So in the game we have b4 played by Grischuk, we have d3 fixing the pawn, now d6, which is now a symmetrical pawn structure. When you have this symmetrical pawn structures, you should always evaluate your strength, which piece is good, which piece is bad. Basically in these positions all of the minor pieces are very good, so but when it comes to this pawn centric, we see that this is a static center. It means that black and white could make progress. For instance, white could try maybe c3 d4 ideas, or another positional idea could be maybe to play some outposts here on d5 or on f5. On the other hand, black could maybe try to occupy maybe the d4 and f4 square. So it's all about outposts, pawn breakthroughs, really this dynamics in the game. It's really complex middle game because there are many options for both players to do. Here in the game, Vichy played the move knight to d2. We have knight to f5, preventing some active knight to c4 ideas and also attacking the bishop on b3. We don't want to give up the bishop pair, of course, in an early stage of the game, so that's why bishop to a2, and now after c5 we have c3. The problem now in this pawn structure for black is that you cannot play anymore this idea. As I said, in the static center setups you cannot play on knight outpost on d4. Maybe you could try something on f5, but so far on d4 is not possible. And you have played already with your pawns on the c file and e file. Now there is maybe the possibility for white in some occasions, if the position allows it, of course, to play knight to c4, knight to e3, and then maybe to cement the knight on a weak square d5. In the game knight to c6 played by Grischuk, we have d4. Here, as I said, you could really have a certain flexibility in the game. You can create pawn breakthrough motifs, outpost motif. Here Vichy goes for the pawn breakthrough motif. Here after b takes c3 we have b takes c3, and now after e takes d4 we have c takes d4. If you try, for instance, to play something like knight takes d4, then knight takes d4, c takes d4, bishop to b2, and I think white is slightly better here because white will eventually capture this pawn on d4, but then continues the game with a more healthier pawn structure. We would have only 2 pawn islands, black would have 3 pawn islands here on the board, so it's of course slightly better for white. So that's why in the game knight to b4 played by Grischuk, Grischuk didn't take the pawn, and here Viswanathan plays the move bishop to b1, placing the bishop into this idea never allowed this knight to jump, and also this knight is restricting this bishop's ability to play, so this is a restriction idea for both pieces. But as I said again, you don't want to lose these bishops in an early stage of the game. At least you have to have a clear idea if you want to lose your bishop in an early stage of the game. So far the position is dynamic, the position can get open, so that's why it's very important to stay with the bishops on the board. Here in the game, bishop to g4 played by Grischuk, pinning the knight. We have h3, bishop to h5, and now g4, bishop to g3, and now d5. We have now a new position which is really static, because there is really no good way here for white to make this pawn move immediately e5, because if you make that happen then your d5 pawn is hanging, so it's very risky to play this idea too early. You have to prepare this move. You see your d5 is still weakness in the position. It's supported of course by the pawn on e4, and we have now created a new position which is similar to the Benoni defense. If you have played many times the Benoni, where black has this pawn structure d6 and c5, white's idea against this pawn structure is to crack the position around this square e5 or attack the weak d6 pawn. Black's idea is to create a very powerful knight outpost maybe on e5. That's only possible to do this idea when the bishops are off the board. Maybe we could get rid maybe somehow of this star square bishop and maybe of this knights, and try really somehow to place our knight on e5, creating really a compact position around the square. The other idea can be maybe to get also a very nice outpost on d4, but I'm not seeing a good way how black should make progress and try to cement something here on d4. So in the game, knight to to d7, you see it comes with the idea to block lead for a while this move e5 by white. We have knight to c4. Again, Vichy is preparing this idea. See, Vichy is trying to get some kind of a dynamic game here. In the game, rook to b8 was played, and now bishop to f4, simply attacking further this d6 and preparing this e5 move. Knight to b6 played by Grischuk. Here knight takes b6, rook takes b6, and we have now knight to d2. A reloading system here, reloading idea by Anand, again with the same idea to place our knight on c4 and finally trying to crack the position around this move e5. So that's why Grischuk plays a very nice move. I think bishop to g5. If we evaluate this activity of all of our minor pieces, I believe that here the bishop on f4 is the best minor piece of white because it directly attacks the weak pawn on d6. This bishop is bad because it's blocked out by its own pawns, and this knight will probably get very actively into the game with this on the square c4, but this bishop is bad. So that's why Grischuk goes into a favorable trades of pieces with bishop to g5, where he tries to undermine, of course, the pressure on the square d6. But if this game goes now into positional endgame, I think that black could maybe be better because black has at least attacked the weak pawn on e4, and this bishop on b1 is still blocked out by its own pawn. So we have bishop to g5, queen takes g5, and now again Anand plays the same idea, knight to c4, rook to b8, and here comes the tricky part. You cannot take the pawn, of course, on d6 because you get queen to e5, and then you lose the rook on a1. We have queen to d2, then queen takes, knight takes d2, and here we have a new position in which, okay, it's an endgame stage. Again, black hasn't made mistakes, I believe, so far. It's still playable for both sides, but now in this position I think that we'll see now the great performance by Vishy Anand. Again, I'm pointing out e5 is not an immediate possibility because you lose your d5 pawn, so it has to be prepared at least something like f4. You have to protect somehow your d5 pawn, so you need many moves in order to make something happen. We have f6. Grischuk continues to block now this potential e5 move, and here Anand plays knight to c4, again attacking, rook to d8, and we have now f4. Finally trying to crack the position. You see how many moves Vichy has prepared here to make really this plan happen. We have bishop to f7 and now rook to a3. It's possible to play a rook with because this knight cannot move anyway. Knight to a6 is not a possibility. Again, if you try a5, knight to a5 will happen. So still these pieces are paralyzed by each other. The knight cannot move because of the bishop cannot move because of the knight. In the game g5 played by Grischuk, and here comes a great move, I think, by Vishy Anand, in which he shows really his endgame skills, his endgame technique. Here comes the move h4, sacrificing the pawn, because if you take here the pawn, f takes g5, then after f takes g5, we have now a new position in which white has really a bad backward pawn. It's not a good position, I think, here for white. Black could try maybe somehow to play a blockade, rook to e8, never allow white to move the pawn on e5. Trying maybe somehow to remaneuver the knight if this knight comes on e5 to create this Benoni knight. It's really called the Benoni knight. When we manage to fix the knight around the square e5, then it's a good position here for black. In the game, that's why Anand played a great move h4. Sacrificing a pawn, but that's just for a little bit. After g takes f4, we have rook to f3, and you see now how the position is again dynamic, because at least we have now these two pawns to roll. We can make something happen here. Bishop to e8 was played, and now Anand simply sacrifices a pawn. Great move, rook to f4. We have king to g7, protecting the pawn on f6, but now h5. Here Grischuk takes the pawn, bishop to f4, but now a great move again by Anand here, h6. We want to really make something happen here. It's time to push the pawns. If you try, for instance, king to g6, that's a problem because you get simply e5, the discovered check. There's nothing you can do. You have to move the king, then you get rook takes f6, followed with knight takes d6. So you see how problematic this position can sometimes be for black. In the game after the move h6, here king takes h6 was played, but now this rook comes very active into the game. Rook takes f6, and that's what I meant about Anand. Now the position is really playable. You see, we have now clear target. It's the pawn on d6. In the game, king to g7 was played, and here Vishy simply supports the rook here, never allowed this king to escape somehow. Still, this d6 can be taken after a couple of moves in the game. That's why rook to f8. We have rook takes d6, bishop to c2. We have knight to e5. Very, very nice move, getting this knight very active into the game. Rook to f4, attacking the pawn, but now rook takes f6. Very cool move here by again by Vishy Anand. If you take rook takes f6, then after g takes f6, king takes f6, then you get to fork on d7. So that's why it was a great tactic that Vishy saw. Here after rook to h4, we have d6, we have bishop to b1, knight takes b1, and now after rook takes e4, it seems that maybe something went wrong for Vishy, but this pass pawn is really uncatchable for black. The black rook is simply too far away from the action. Here Vishy plays simply rook to f7. We have king to g8, and now rook to e7, protecting this knight, still with possibilities to play d7, and then the idea is to play rook to e8. In the game, rook to d8 was played. Here we have rook to d1, very important move to support our pawn, of course. In the game, c6, but it comes too late because Vishy has the simple d7, rook to f4, and now rook to f1. Very important move to get this rook behind. As I said, our main tactical threat is to move rook to e8, followed with d takes e8. So that's why Grischuk get this rook back on f8. But now after rook takes f8, king takes f8, and now rook takes h7, this game is over. Grischuk tried here to move c3, but now after knight to g6 in this position, Grischuk resigned, because if you play king to g8, then you get rook to h8, and we'll simply take this rook, play then after that rook to c8, and we are catching this pawn. On the other hand, we can again promote a new queen, and it would be game over here for black. So great game, I think, by Vishy Anand. Shows really the power of these ideas to get these pawns rolling somehow. I was really impressed by this idea. Maybe it wasn't the best tactical game, the most attractive game, but you see, these are the common chess games that we are playing. We cannot always just play chess with some great queen sacrifices, rook sacrifices, really triple piece sacrifices or similar. Yes, this is how chess is played. Most of the times you will play similar games, of course not in maybe in this level like Vishy Anand, but as I said, you have to realize your potential ideas, your potential strength of the position, then make something happen, get these pawns rolling. And I think, as I said, that Vishy Anand was really one of the best chess players in history when it comes to creating dynamics out of statics. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. If you want to see some other games from this tournament, check out this link here of this World Chess Championship in 2007. And if you want to see the best chess games of all time, check out my best chess games of all time series. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.